All right, we're live, or at least all the cameras and stuff are running.
Awesome.
Nice to be here again, chatting, and we're happy to be with a friend of ours, Dave, better known as the Polysmith, on Instagram and other forms of social media. Thanks for being here.
Hey, hi guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, nah, it's great to have you finally on here. Like I feel we've been following your work for a long time and like it's always exciting to see the next thing and see what you're doing.
Yeah, likewise. I think there's a group of people that I'm always kind of following on social media, and it's we'll get into that obviously later. But yeah, you guys are right up there. So and we've kind of collaborated in the past on a few little
Yeah.
projects here and there, and yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, nah, it's been great. This team's modern synthesis at least is in the chat here,
Oh no.
or Mr. Pink, or
He
however
seems
we want.
excited. He says
He's
Air
got
Yeah,
arrows.
Force.
Ward's told English
Yeah.
here too.
That's good.
So I guess we could just start out like, how's everybody doing now? As these are sort of crazy times and such. Like, um, I've still been finding time to do hobby related stuff, so that's good.
Well, I mean, probably some people, if they're in a non-essential business, they have more hobby time than
Yeah.
usual.
You'd think that, but no.
Yeah,
I thought I was going to have like loads of hobby time, but it hasn't happened. I
it
don't know.
hasn't
I
happened.
don't know what I'm doing wrong. I had a kid. I think that was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah. Well, it's probably the right thing in many
In the
other
long haul,
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it makes it harder, which it is interesting. Like, because I feel like I have, since I'm working from home now primarily, like I have more time potentially, but it's hard to schedule things and work things out such that I feel I don't really ultimately do more than I had in the past.
Also, nice to
Yeah.
have you here as well, Grimlock. Yeah,
But I
that's
mean,
the
I've
same
still
with
been
me.
Oh, we
doing
got some
stuff.
new people in the chat. I think that might be a friend of mine from work.
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
Okay.
that's cool. Well,
Strangers in the chat.
yeah. Have you been able to work on anything recently, Dave? Or
I have, yeah. I'm working on a couple of things. So I've been going back and forth uh, with Cody, Magos Bureau.
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah, we chat a lot, and we were chatting about the Iron Sleep Invitational, the Demons thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to commit to anything. And we were just sort of chatting about it. And I started coming up with an idea for something. So I've been working on some demony stuff.
That's fun.
Yeah. Which I will show you later when the stream starts.
Oh, cool.
Maybe.
Yeah, so I've things have been, I feel, relatively slow for me. Like um still working on that Eldar conversion. Like I finally started painting the model, but it's still very much at the beginning stages of it. And so like I'm relatively happy with it, but I've also been spending a fair amount of time playing around with setting up stuff to do more regular streams with like a better camera to potentially
Hmm.
stream me like painting and whatnot or converting stuff. So some of my time's been put there.
Yeah. Seems Dave may have
Oh, hey,
Disconnected.
Dave.
Oh
Oh,
yeah. Hey Dave.
no, Dave X Dave.
Yeah.
Other Dave is here, but Polysmith Dave may have disconnected for a moment.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm
Okay,
back.
good. He's back.
Oh, okay.
That might happen a few times because I've got this, like, it literally is my iPhone going into my computer right now because it's the only way I can get video and audio on my
Oh,
desktop right now. So it might
okay.
occasionally crap out, but it only takes a second for me to just pick it on again.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was pretty quick jump back in. Not too bad.
It's not like with your computer, Eric, where the whole thing locks up and
Oh yeah,
shuts
my
down.
computer has issues. It has lots of issues.
the office has just been through like a lot of changes recently. I brought my work machine home, and everything is. I feel like the office is barely holding on now. There's too much change too quickly, and it's all just about working. But
yeah, okay.
And Eric, I guess you've been sort of working at painting your Sisters of Battle. You've been working on that for a while now.
Yeah, I finally finished the third, and so that has been nice that I'm slowly doing more of that, and hopefully I can. My goal is to at least finish 2 more because I have them assembled, and then probably never paint one again.
Good goal. Good goal.
But that's fun. And I've been working on this little Forge World lander thing. But since it's a Forge World model, there's lots of like putty work to fill in gaps and make stuff fit together better. But
I understand that.
Yeah.
I have done no hobby work, but then again, I kind of never do hobby work. I have been running a bunch of sessions of the pen and paper role playing game Morkborg via like voice chat and stuff. So like I've been kind of doing gaming related stuff with different people, but it has nothing to do with actually assembling models, unfortunately.
How's that working out? I listened to the stream you guys had on that.
Like it's all been going really well with all the Morkborg stuff. Like I have, I think 4 groups of people that we've been playing Morkborg with. One of the groups is Adam and Eric, Dave X Dave, and Vox Morbus in the chat there. So, and both Dave X Dave and Vox Morbus, like we met via this, like the blog and the podcast and stuff. So like they're not, it wasn't even like old high school friends or something that we're playing role-playing games with. They're people that we met via the stream and stuff. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It occurs to me, have we talked about, like, if you do want to share any photos or something, Dave, like you could probably just send them to like our Hangouts chat and Adam can display them.
Yeah, I can figure that out.
That would be at least a way that it could be done.
Okay.
Because you could also, like, if you hold stuff up, like, we can see it, but since we're doing this through Google Hangouts, it'll really only focus on that if you're talking.
Right. Yeah. Let me grab some stuff and I'll throw it up.
Yeah, so you can, essentially, whenever, if you send them to our other chat here, I can then pretty easily bring them up.
But that's just kind of a technical thing, trying to get things working and whatnot. But
no, I'm sure this is all going to fall apart horribly. Yeah, and it'll be all my fault. It's always me. All right.
I'm sure it'll work out okay.
Technical issues have a way of creeping up on almost anyone.
It's true.
It just seems to be always me. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, so Dave, you said you were working on some demon things. Is that in relationship to like the 28 magazine?
Sorry, yeah, the 28 magazine was the one I was referring to, not the Hands League thing. Sorry, I missed that one up. Yeah, it was
because they did have a invitational thing too.
Yeah.
Oh,
there you go. It's
Dave X Dave reminds me and us in the chat that so Morkborg has a Kickstarter launching tomorrow so Morkborg has a pretty active like fan community on an official Discord server that they have, and a lot of people on the fan community are like coming up with their own content and stuff that they then submit, and then the graphical designer to Morkborg like takes that and does artwork for it and then releases all that stuff for free. And a bunch of that is being combined along with some additional content for like a little zine sort of thing with like additional stuff for the game that they're
that's cool.
Kickstarter for tomorrow. And yeah, and particularly it's neat that a lot of the content stuff that people and the Discord server have come up with. I mean, and I've actually had a hand in creating or helping people create some content that I think probably none of that will actually be in this Kickstarter thing, but I guess there's a small chance. Regardless, it's neat.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're creative and excited about Morkborg too, you could get on there and you could start creating cool content for other people to use.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like those photos you sent went through, Dave, so that's good.
Right on. Okay.
I'll bring them up when we're talking about them. I don't know if I necessarily want to bring them up. I'll essentially click on them and it'll bring them up on my browser and they'll show up. So I might keep them hidden for until we actually start the episode proper. But that stuff looks really good.
Yeah, it's a creepy looking thing.
Yeah. So what's the thought? We could probably pretty soon just start the episode of the podcast. What's everyone feeling?
I feel that's probably
We might
fine.
as well. Like, we're starting this like an hour before the streams normally start, and we might as well actually get to the brunt of this before it's too late, and we kind of undid the goodness of starting a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, if everyone's ready, I'm just going to start the introduction thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Actually, how do I even start this? It's been a while, so I guess it's just... Yeah, all right. So I'm going to start it now.
Perfect.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dragged into Turbolasers, a Between the Bolter and Me podcast. This is episode 71, and I'm here tonight as your host, Eric Wire. I'm here with my two brothers, Adam Wire.
Hey, everybody.
Greg Wire.
Hey, everyone.
And I'm excited that we have a guest here tonight as well, our friend Dave, but perhaps better known as the Polysmith on Instagram and sort of other social media. Nice to have you here, Dave.
Hey, everyone. Nice to be here.
Yeah, and as I suspect most people who are listening to this podcast are probably familiar with the Polysmith's work, as he creates all sorts of fantastic conversions that merge a lot of interesting imagery and mechs and Xenos and different things together that all look very fitting in the 40K setting, but also kind of unique in their own right. And it's like hard to place exactly where they might be. So they're, I guess, perhaps more imaginative than a lot of conversions you might see where it's just like, oh, another Inquisitor or like some Chaos Space Marine. But we thought it would be nice to have Dave on here such that we could kind of talk to him a little bit about how he goes about his creative process and just hear a little bit about that and what makes him tick and how he does that sort of thing. But yeah. But I guess with that, we might as well just start going into some of our questions, and maybe like as a very standard sort of thing that we often ask, could you just talk a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into the hobby?
Sure, I can talk a lot. But my name's Dave Smith, Polysmith on social media and all that good stuff. By day, I am an artist and art director for video games, but by night, occasionally, every 30th or 40th night when I get a minute, I do this hobby thing, this modeling thing. So I think I started, well, before I even started in the hobby, I think it was my dad who turned me onto this stuff. He was a military historian. He was a scale modeler. Mm-hmm. So my early memories of his kind of dad cave was just a wall full of armor, a wall full of tanks and armored vehicles and occasionally planes and mostly kind of heavy allied and Axis kind of armor. And he was a mechanic and really good about, he can build anything, deconstruct everything. He's kind of trained as a blacksmith. He's just super handy with everything like that. So he used to paint a little bit, but I never really didn't really click for me. And then I guess about somewhere around 1988, I was starting to get into like the Palladium Ninja Turtles role-playing game. And so I was really into that. I was really into Ninjas and Super Spies and Heroes Unlimited and all those kind of, I think the Robotech and the Macross ones as well for that system. And then I was at my local game store. I saw the sort of Rogue Trader, Warhammer World Trader first edition book, which was in my mind at that time more than just another RPG that I should take a look at. And that's been the story of my life, has been like, oh, there's an RPG, I should take a look at that. It's like now Kickstarter's just ruined my wallet. Because for a while it was the mini sets, and I just got addicted to those, and I'm like, I'm never going to use or paint any of these. What am I doing? But I still have a soft spot for RPGs and RPG source books and world building and that kind of stuff. But so I guess about 88, 89, something like that. And then it was that book that kind of fired my imagination, I think, for the next few years. That one was just, I mean, everybody knows that book. It's just wild. No, it's not 40K as I guess Games Workshop wants to admit anymore. But there's something about that has just stuck with me ever since. And, damn space vampires and weird gene stealers and, psychic stuff all over the place. Like, it was just, and Space Marines hanging out in a bar drinking, like, cool. I don't know. There was something about, it seemed like there was endless possibilities. You could go anywhere in this universe and you'd find a pocket of it that was different. Yeah. Nobody really knew how it worked. And that's kind of, with the codification of everything as we've gone through the versions and the releases, like, I still feel like it's out there. It's just GW's not looking in that direction.
That's sort of what I've always thought. So, like, in the earlier stuff, the Rogue Trader stuff, it was very in the forefront. There was a lot of weird, interesting stuff going on. And then over the years, they've tried to, like, hone in on certain things and really develop a kind of like a world and history. And what I always sort of loved about the universe and the hobby was, at least I always thought, there was enough room for you to still essentially do whatever you want, make whatever weird, interesting things, and whether or not Games Workshop themselves would put a focus on some of that stuff again, it didn't really matter. And I feel...
Yeah, all those weird dark corners.
The Grey Knights Run is cool now that they've told us so much about them.
Right, and the Grey Knights they were the first, like, they were my Resurgence army in 2015. That was the first box I bought when I got back into the hobby later. But that's because my memory of Grey Knights was like, yeah, they were cool. And that was I want psychic Space Marines.
I mean, I guess the concept is still cool, but I feel now that they've explored it so much, it's like very much, all right, this is exactly what they are. They've told you, whereas before they gave you hints and some general descriptions, and then you could do what you want with them.
Sure, and I think that's just the methodology. I think that informs a lot of what I'm doing now. Is just go out and find somewhere that nobody's looking.
Yeah,
you're going to see what's there. You get echoes of it in a lot of the books, particularly some of the 30K Horus Heresy stuff, where they talk about Xenos races that the next page are wiped out forever and will never reappear. But you go, oh, cool, giant spiders and murder, that's cool, let's do that. Or there's, and I always had this kind of feeling that to be a rogue trader in the galaxy was to actually hang out in a, Mos Eisley Cantina style environment where you get to hang out with a lot of races that never made the pages of any of the books. Yeah. So I've always been more interested in that, in the freewheeling kind of lone rogue trader, starship captain out on the borders of the known galaxy.
Well, that fits really well with like role-playing games and stuff too. I feel like telling the story of like a few interesting characters, like that feels like role-playing more so than what 40K is more and more become like games of building armies and having armies clash, less individual characters.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the just Games Workshop for making models and such, like almost by necessity, they had to like focus in on stuff and like, let's develop these Space Marines. They're supposed to be these rare individuals that most humans or whatever would like never even see one in their lives. But like for the hobby itself, it's like everyone's seen Space Marines. Everyone has a bunch of them, as an army of them, this and that, which is pretty different from the lore behind it. So like I think that's just kind of will always be there. But the fact that Games Workshop does kind of support and encourage people to explore these other different things, and with like Blackstone Fortress and some of those other games, like it shows that, you know, the people still there still love that sort of stuff, even if it maybe isn't often what's portrayed in the models or the source books and such.
Yeah, definitely. When that Blackstone Fortress stuff started to drop, and there was all the Rogue Trader expansion for the heck,
Kill Team, right?
Yeah, Kill Team. That was the one. Yeah, it was. Yeah. I was just like, oh, finally, we're going to see a little bit more of that stuff. And you know, the Blackstone Fortress Amble expansion. I bought that. I just had to have an Amble. Like,
yes,
cool.
Agreed. Also,
that is unconverted on my shelf. It's one of the few models that
That's
great.
Well, are there anything in particular in like the Rogue Trader like book that you feel like, now that if Games Workshop would go back to any one of the weird corners of that book, that's what you'd want?
I feel like I want to like unwind time and let the Gene Stealers be their own thing.
Okay, yeah.
and like get them, like take them away from the Tyranid thing. Just because there was that image. I mean, we've shared that image between us before. That the image of the sort of slug-like Gene Stealer with the tendrils around the mouth. That one locked into my brain like the first time I read the book, and it's been stuck there ever since. You know, I think, you know, I would love to see. I don't know how this would even be possible, but like, you know, almost like a throwback weird shit of the GW Universe box set. You know, where they just go back and they find all of the dead ends that everybody sort of, you know, we've papered over that one, or the non-canon versions of things, kind of like an Elseworlds kind of a deal.
You
just get some really cool stuff. I mean, sure, we can build it ourselves. That's fine. It's always just, I think I just want Games Workshop to admit it. So, you know, you did this. Just go back and have a look at it. You know?
Yeah. No, that's certainly true. That's certainly true.
Because, well, I feel like, wow, like a lot of the people in like the Inc. 28 and like heavy converting like community and stuff are very familiar with like some of the older source material. I feel a lot of the newer people into the hobby and stuff kind of have no idea where a lot of the stuff has come from. And
yeah, cause it's hard to access some of that material now.
Definitely.
So I guess when like you go about like converting and creating models, where do you kind of look for inspiration and such for creating them? Because as I kind of mentioned, that a lot of your work doesn't, like, you can't just look at that and say like, oh, that's obviously a Space Marine, or this is an Eldar construct or whatnot. Like, I feel your look is a lot more unique and diverse from that. So like, how do you kind of go into creating something?
Again, I mean, it just depends on the project. I think a lot of what my initial thought process is X plus Y. What would an Eldar look like if it was designed by, you know, anime mecha designer? Or, you know, what would a Space Marine look like if, you know, instead of going this way towards Primera Space Marines, they doubled down on the Gothic kind of madness and went in the other way. It's often just trying to find two nouns or verbs and just sort of throw them at each other in a way that kind of, you know, what if the Raypoint thing for the Eldar was just the thing where I was like, I couldn't get them. I've always loved Eldar, from like, that was my first models of Games Workshop that I ever collected. I think I had Swooping Hawks.
Mm-hmm.
I had a Striking Scorpion, and then I had one of the little metal Eldar Phantom Titans, I want to say, the little epic scale ones, which I painted in a rainbow kind of pattern, trying to do wet blending. It's awful. I'm sure there's a picture at my mom's house somewhere. But the mythology around the Eldar and this, I mean, much as I often sort of get a bit weary of the universe is endlessly awful and everybody's hanging on by a thread, something about that doomed Eldar race that they've been doomed for like 100,000 years.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and they're still just going about it. Is you know, it has that, it's the same Tolkien thing, right? They're the last kind of remnants of in our world. They're sort of a callback to an era where things were very different. And just the idea of Wraithbone as a technology that they have had for millions of years, and that is still uniquely theirs. I mean, other than sort of the occasional Xenos artifact winding up in an Inquisitor's kind of arsenal. Nobody else is trying to retread that. We're not seeing innovations in that area too much. I mean, we might be. I'm not familiar with the latest post the Great Rift appearance thing. I'm not super up on my current role. Maybe Cole's doing with Wraithbone these days. I don't know. Maybe. But it was a thing. It's like, okay, well, this is grown. This is psychically grown bones, matter of some kind. How can we make that super gnarly and go down that direction? And I think it's just finding those elements where something that in the lore is familiar, but perhaps is either so well observed or there's had enough focus on it that you just have to take it in a really different direction, or that it's a detail that most people have been like, yeah, I know about that, but I'm not really paying attention to it. That you just try and find things to latch onto, and that usually leads me down somewhere interesting.
What kind of, with that in mind, does that mean like you're primarily you have a concept that you want to sort of achieve, then you look in towards like how you might create it with some of Games Workshop models and such, or with digital sculpting, things like that?
With digital sculpting, definitely. I've never been served well by going into the sculpting session with just sort of trying to explore. I find actually that the act of kit bashing actually has become a lot of my concept process now.
Okay.
The way if I'm at work, I will concept on. I have a Sharpie and a stack of Post-it notes, and that is literally like that's the entire way that I get stuff done. So it's that if I'm not in the workbench, if I'm at the workbench, I will just go and pull some ideas down, and sometimes it just goes, completely sideways. I started with one of those it's up on my Instagram somewhere. It's the kind of spaceship with the Valkyrie in the front, kind of strapped in with the four wings. And that one started off as the tractor, one of the tractor elements from the Sector Mechanicus set, that then became a spaceship. And I'm still not quite sure how I got there, but something about that shape just went, yep. Just scrolling down. I'm pretty sure it's up there somewhere. So sometimes, more often than not, it's just the part calls to me. But that one was an example of where I just kind of tripped over the part thinking about something else. I was really, one of the things that I'm still really obsessed with in the GW universe is like what's out there that has never landed on a planet. This idea of things that just are out there in the void, ancient things that we just have that even are unknown to anybody because of the size, the distances involved, and the fact that everybody travels through the warp, and unless you're the Tyranids, you might have eaten 12 of them. I don't know. Like you've never stumbled across this stuff, and I just felt there's so much out there, so much room to explore. And when you see some of the reference points for GW stuff, calling back to classical mythology, Norse mythology, and really being a sort of sponge for world mythologies, there's plenty of room to maneuver. It also helps when you just play God of War and you're obsessed with the Valkyries.
Yeah, I feel Games Workshop has always been very good at taking inspiration from all over the place. Like I feel most of their ideas have some basis in something else. I guess maybe one could say anything, like nothing is new anymore, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess kind of with that in mind, do you then just have like a lot of models, GW models that you can just kind of explore and mess around with different parts when things kind of take your fancy? In that regard, do you just have a lot of kits and such, and are they primarily GW ones?
Do you want me to, search? Let me show you some shame here. I'm gonna send you an image.
well, the amount of stuff that Adam has in his apartment is outrageous too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think I even like qualify that highly, basically. But yeah, it's.
Well, I guess it's interesting for people who are more about doing conversions and things like this and aren't building armies. It's a little different. Like our like piles of shame or something that like literally most of the pieces or parts in a kit are not used.
Oh, 100%. I will go after a kit for two reasons, right? I'll go after that was my attempt to get rid of the boxes that I ran out of space in the garage. I just ran out of space. So I was dividing everything up by faction into Ziploc bags and then attempting to find a way to sort of categorize them. You can see, yeah. So, I will go after a kit for a part. I don't, not quite so much nowadays. And then those trays at the top are what those baggies eventually ended up in. And you can see I still did manage to get everything on that shelf. I think was GW. And then there's a shelf to the right, which is model kits and Gundam parts and other non-GW stuff.
Yeah.
I see a Big Daddy, like from Bioshock. It looks.
Oh yeah, I used to work for 2K, and I think there was we were moving offices or something, and that was hanging out. So that came with. I had a pact with my buddy Eric. He's on Instagram as EliV1. He was kind of instrumental. He was the producer when I was at 2K, and he was instrumental in getting me back into the hobby. And we have a pact. One day we're going to repaint those. I think they're actually little sisters in there, but we haven't got around to it. Life is getting in the way of that one. And I hate painting. So I don't hate painting. I struggle with the motivation to start painting. Let's just say that.
Yeah,
I understand that.
It's challenging. It's challenging.
For some reason, my brain always goes, this shouldn't take as long as the modeling part, right?
I'm really
it takes 8 times longer.
Yeah.
Well, so or go on, Dave.
Yeah, sorry, just to kind of jump back into the sort of how these things kind of take shape. I think I don't worry too much about whether or not it really fits into the GW canon. Like the fact that I'm using mostly their parts tends to take care of that. I find I have to work pretty hard to break that. It's usually taking spikes off of things, if I'm honest. That helps. Trying to dodge skulls and spikes is a challenge when chaos and bits boxes.
It's literally like 60% skulls and spikes.
Yeah. So but I love that about it as well. I love it. And that little skull set is gold.
It's great.
Well, and as you said towards the beginning, like the 40,000 universe is vast enough that it can basically fit whatever you would want to do, such that I feel like it would be hard to make something that you couldn't justify as somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although I've had a couple of comments on some of the Facebook groups that obviously like that doesn't look. I think I did a commission for Dark Tech. It was an alternate take on the Cole model, and it was using a lot of sort of more diesel punky shapes. Mm-hmm. I definitely caught some heat from the hardcore fans about that one.
Yeah, well, there are always going to be some people, and particularly if they're people who love the Horus Heresy stuff. I feel like they're often the most critical about saying that this or that doesn't look right, and that can sometimes be grating.
Yeah,
I mean, I genuinely, and I think I genuinely don't give a shit. Like I really don't. I'm happy. Like I love the hobby for the fact that so many people can get involved in it. You know, I love that it's a safe landing spot for people who don't consider themselves creative. You know, the first step that you take into the hobby, especially now with the amount of resources that GW have been putting up around it, like it's. I don't want this to sound dismissive, but it's kind of like 3D coloring books. It's a way in for people that just don't normally engage with an artistic endeavor.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have this ability to come in and go, okay, what do I need? This, and this paint. And Duncan's going to show me how to do that stuff. And then my first time out is just like, oh, wow, I did something that looks like theirs, but is mine. And I made this. And then some people continue being happy and improving that skill. And then some of us weirdos take a turn and go off in a different direction. But the point is that there's room for all of that.
Yes.
And it feels welcoming. And maybe it didn't feel welcoming. I mean, I think I was lucky enough. I came in just as the tide was turning back, as Games Workshop was starting to engage with the
community and stuff again.
With the community. Yeah, I mean, I really sort of like, I pieced out during the bad years, you know, and I think I came back in just as that tide was starting to turn again.
It is true. It's great how like welcoming and vast the community and just the Games Workshop is. Like they have all the Black Library and their novels. Like you can play all these games sort of competitively. And like we certainly started, like we were pretty young and just were trying to make armies, assemble stuff poorly, paint poorly, all that stuff. But like over time, like you kind of learn and grow and figure out like what aspect of it do you like the most, and then you can focus on that and not feel like you're doing something wrong. It's just like whatever you want it to be, and that's great.
And everybody seems pretty much supportive. I mean, I think I'm super lucky in the folks that I just bumped into as I was coming back into the hobby. You know, I think I see him in the chat, but like, you know, Mr. Pink was super welcoming and really helped me get kind of like more visibility into the kind of stuff I was doing, particularly on Instagram, and you know, and like Dark Tech and Magos and Gur and you guys and a raft of other people, you know, Mixula over at Iron Sleet, and a whole bunch of people have just been, and a lot of the guys involved with the 28 mag. You know, it just feels super nice to sort of weirdly kind of find your people where I wasn't expecting it. It's, you know, I love that about the hobby. It's just, there's always going to be blowhards and, you know, people screeching from the peanut gallery. But for the most part, no. And it's just so good.
Nah, it is very true.
So we have a question from World Sylvania asking, how do you integrate all of the different parts and stuff you use with such precision? So, like, I guess, are there a set of, like, modeling hobby tools and stuff? Like, I feel a lot of your really fantastic creations and robots and stuff, like, you're using parts and stuff from all over, and, like, in most cases, like, the execution is, like, all but seamless. Like, you're very...
they tend to not even look like conversions. It seems like this was just how the kit was supposed to be.
They look like kits that you wish you could just buy from GW.
If I was faster, you could buy them for me. No. I'm so slow. Some of my favorite things to use. Saw. I have a jeweler's saw, I have a razor saw, and I have like a honking big Japanese wood saw that cuts on the pull.
Okay,
And weirdly, that one I use all the time, and it is not a mini scale saw.
Okay.
So I end up like the part that I'm not using is done. But I always, for me, it's about like, can I get it done quickly and still have a semblance of accuracy? I use a lot of saw guides, but mostly, I mean, you'd be surprised the amount of stuff that's just hidden underneath other pads and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm ideating and I'm trying to get to the core of the shape, I don't clean anything off. So it's got nubs on there. It's got seam lines. I don't do that until I'm confident that I have the shape.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it's just honestly, I will, some of the worst things I do is I'll go to eBay and I'll buy a part, convinced it's the part I need for it, and then that part will end up buried and on the model, and you never see it. So I sort of stopped worrying about how clean the parts were when I kind of put them in there. I will say that one of the things that I do a lot is I use plastic cement to really melt the shit out of two parts. I will let that sit until they're real goopy, and then jam them together. And I also use a lot of this is relatively recent, more this year. I've been using a lot of just sprue goo. I'll take my old sprue and like immerse it in the Tamiya thin cement. And that, because we can get into this whenever you like, but like green stuff is just the worst for me. And as a concept, the idea of like a two-part curing epoxy that I'm supposed to model in feels like the universe is being unfair. I mean, I grew up, like, I'm trained as a sculptor, so I'm used to my medium, like not deciding it's done with me after an hour's work, right? I'm just not comfortable. Like, yes, it has its benefits. Sometimes waiting for a certain part to cure so you can do some cloth stuff with it is interesting, but mostly I feel resentful towards it. And so what I'd much rather do is use something that kind of flashes off really fast, like a sprue goo, and then I can get in there and sort of sculpt it. Sort of reductive sculpt with using tools. So saws, definitely, the old X-Acto 11. My secret weapon, because I'm getting older and my eyes aren't so good and my hands aren't so good, is to use one of these hemo thingy clamps. It's like a medical clamp. And I use that for if I'm working on heads, they just clamp in real quick and you can adjust the tension on them, and they give you a lot of degrees of freedom of turning around. That stuff's like
that's a good idea, actually.
They are, and you can kind of, if you need a little bit more play in the jaws, you can kind of bend them out a little bit and kind of do that stuff. And then because I was also tired of gluing myself to myself, I switched to using black super glue, so I can see where the damn stuff is, because I've had to wander into the kitchen going, has anybody got any nail polish remover? So many times at this point, it's all, everything is kind of in service of the communities. But I think if there's anything, it's the saws. It's I splurged on some God hand nippers.
I recently got a pair of them. They're really nice.
They're super nice, and I was really, the first pair I dropped on the floor and broke, so that was a while before I got another pair. But I'm back up and running now. Just everything in my workshop ends up on the floor. I put everything on my work surface, and then the work surface gets full of sprues until I'm working on the last centimeter of it, like in the edge.
That's why everyone slowly acquires a larger pool of nippers.
And then I guess the only other thing I think was super useful, and it's kind of feeds into the sort of kind of reductive stuff, is a little like a handpiece, little hand drill. It's like a Dremel, but it's smaller. I find the Dremels to be like too chunky. It's just a little sort of Chinese hand drill that takes the Dremel attachments. Because recently I've become way more interested in sort of surface qualities. I've been looking at a lot of the scale model guys on YouTube, stuff like what have we got? I'm going to refer to some notes here.
Scale Model Workshop.
And Night Shift and Plasmo. Scale Model Workshop especially,
milling all his pieces out of brass.
That guy is next level.
It's the craziest shit.
It was awesome though, because it was one of those things where I'm like, yeah, that's never going to be me, and I'm cool with that. I mean, I love it. I love watching the craft of it.
It's awesome to see it.
And I love the fact that he's a dentist in real life, and dental alginate as a filler with some super glue, and I'm like, yeah, that's how I love it when people's day job starts to inform.
Yeah, it's neat to see how different perspectives and stuff and experience can be used to achieve different things.
And it's also good to watch take ideas from different communities per se. It feels like people should be looking towards the scale model community more than it feels like they are.
I mean, admit it, I think people are a lot more now than they had ever before, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels like it's kind of two-way as well. I see, particularly like Night Shifts. If you haven't checked out his channel, yeah, it's just Night Shift on YouTube. I think he's from maybe the Czech Republic or Poland or one of those places. But I can see the influence of some of the GW kind of technical stuff in what they're doing over there with the way that he's highlighting the plates, but still coming at it with a very kind of realistic aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see everything sort of starting to cross-pollinate, and just the access to that information on YouTube particularly now. I mean, for a long time, I just spent hours on YouTube just trying to absorb as much stuff as I could, because I was aware that I was coming into a hobby 20 something years after I left and trying to play a bit of catch up. So I've been a sponge the last few years for that stuff.
Well, so you've talked a little bit about like your physical tools and stuff like that. So you also do a fair amount of like digital sculpting and stuff, and try and like incorporate that into like the models and stuff you make. Like, how much is that something that how much do you gravitate towards that, or is it just very much project dependent? And like, I would also
that's work, and I want to stay away from that and use this as a physical means of doing things.
Yeah.
I mean, that is exactly the problem with it. It's the reason. I mean, the reason I got into it is because I wasn't getting to do any art as part of my job. I was in charge of a really big team, and I was managing multiple studios in the Czech Republic and in China, and I didn't have a single second to have any creative output. And so the hobby was the way that I scratched that itch. Since then, I've changed jobs, and my current job is way more hands-on, and I get to do a whole bunch of different cool, fun stuff as well. But still, the urge to be in front of a screen when I'm at home isn't that high. I usually go after it if I'm after something specific that I really feel like I want to try this outside. Like, I want to play with a different scale. I want to do a 70mm Eldar, or I want to do, what if I built my own new arms for an Imperial Knight because I wanted the aesthetic to be different. It usually is if I'm trying to do something that's really sort of technical, hard surfacey, and needs a lot of accuracy, then I'll jump into CAD and do it that way. Conversely, if it's a really fun, organic kind of shape that is really mushy and satisfying to do a lot of organic work on, that stuff is still fun. But I don't, for me, the working in miniature parts is just where I move really quickly, and where I can get from an idea to something that feels like a good shape pretty quickly. And then it's all refinement. And yeah, that's the part that takes the longest.
And like when you decided to start to like do some of this digital sculpting for it, that's when you decided to try to get a 3D printer and stuff like that? And has that been something that you're like happy with? Or, I mean, I imagine it's just another learning process like everything is in the hobby. But
I wish I could say that I loved 3D printing more, because I do love it when it works. And then recently, towards the back end of last year, I finally I got a Formlabs Form 3, which is not the finest detail printer, but it's kind of like the sort of MacBook of printers. You just send shit to it and don't worry about it, which was really the goal for me from the outset. One of the things that I ended up really suffering from was the fact that I really didn't want to be a 3D printing engineer. And when I first jumped on that train, everything was so bespoke, and there wasn't a lot of documentation out there, and a lot of the printers were coming out of university groups that just started a Kickstarter, and and now the technologies have all started to standardize, and there's a lot more resources available online for people to go out and get good and use things like the frozen it's the one that's really popular, the resin one. I think they just came out with one that's called the Zero. I forget who the brand is, but
Photon,
that's it. Photon, yeah. So, and I had one of those, and that one is fine. It's and they do great detail. And I think once we see the LCD panels jump to 4K, then I don't think there'll be any difference between that and a GW level kind of model. You can get close right now, but you can't quite get it. There's certain printers. I think there's a Solus Pro that I see a lot of jewelry designers doing that seems to be really kick-ass right now and really an amazing detail printer. But it's like $7,500. Nobody wants to jump into that, right?
Yeah, to like print out a couple heads or something.
I made one set of hands, and nope. And so ever since I've had the Form 3, I've been a lot more productive on it because I feel like what I build comes out the other end. And yes, it's not quite as fine detail, and it's starting to push me into a larger scale. I'm actually doing the work and enjoying it, and that's the most important thing. I'm getting the results. So.
Okay, yeah. So like you can do it and like it printed without doing all this like engineering technical stuff to make sure it actually comes out like you imagine it. Yeah,
it's a closed system. It's more expensive. They have their own resins. They have their own profiles of the resins. It just takes all of the guesswork out of it.
Okay, so that's nice. And I feel
it's a sculptor that prints, not a printer that sculpts on the side.
Yeah. And as you kind of suggested, it has to be just as the years progress, it gets more and more user friendly, and it's not like because I feel I don't know. It's like 6 years ago, I had a friend who like literally like got a kit and built a 3D printer. Like it was like a crappy one and that they had to like do the coding and such. But then it's like now, like a few years later, it's like night and day different. Like they're not even that expensive and they can get like detail that's pretty like is very usable, so it's pretty crazy.
I think we're in like the $200 range, is probably lower below that now for some of them, right? Like
which is pretty
printers, right? I mean, there's still that friction, right? There's still the fact that resin is essentially antithetical to human life. It's just it's to kill you, and it's messy and it smells real bad all the time. And happily, I have the garage space for that stuff, but it's still it'll sneak in the house and. I'm always terrified that I'm going to poison our rabbit. That'll be the first one to go.
Well, I guess related to that, in terms of like, so recently I've been sort of like kicking around the notion of maybe trying to do some digital sculpting because, for instance, like a lot of the stuff we're working on is trying to get better scale and more realistic like firearms and armor and other stuff like that. And I know I spent a lot of time like with really fiddly work piecing together brass tubing and other stuff, and then like if you ever make something and you want to like duplicate it, like recreating anything is typically very hard. Like, is there a way you would recommend getting into stuff like that? Like, I know for instance ZBrush is used a lot, and there are some like I know the full version of ZBrush is very expensive, but they have like cheaper variants that maybe are only like $180 or something. Or is there like, how would you recommend getting into anything like that?
So ZBrush is a weird one because not that it matters to anybody getting into it for the first time, but it does not fit the industry model of an input paradigm. At all. I mean, people that have been in things like Maya and 3D Studio Max for years will just. I mean, my wife hit this last year when she started to use it. She's like, "What is going on in this software?" And I'm like, "Yeah, the learning curve is just a straight line up." And ZBrush has had some other software, like they have the ZBrush Core, which is stripped down.
That's what I was thinking about.
But if you're going to go for something that is like a bit esoteric in terms of its input paradigm, anyway. Blender has some really, really powerful sculpting tools in there, and it's free. And if you want if you want a zero risk, go at it, use that. I don't know if they still have it, but Pixelogic. There was originally a sort of standalone package called Sculptress, which Pixelogic bought and have integrated into ZBrush as a sort of a modeling mode. I think it's still available as a standalone, and I would heartily recommend that. It's free. It's purely for sculpting, and the nice thing about that is that it sort of dynamically manages the geometry underneath what you're sculpting. It'll add geometry in as you sculpt, so you never have to really think about what's going on with your sculpt until your machine runs out of RAM and dies.
What's the name of that again?
It's Sculptress, like sculpt with an RIS on the end. I'm pretty sure even if you can't get it on the official site, there's still versions of it floating out there. I definitely think that's a really soft landing. There's certain things available on iPads, but I wouldn't recommend them right now. It's not quite powerful enough to get. Really
well, actually, so that brings like I know very little about this sort of software or whatever. But do a lot of them is like a lot of the stuff stored on the RAM as you're doing it, and like then do you have to save it? Like if it's saved, you have to then like regenerate it or something?
No, I mean most of those pieces of software now are really robust. I mean, ZBrush is amazing at handling, millions and millions and millions and millions of polygons, and all of that stuff is super robust. Sculptures is very similar. Most of that stuff is. They all have pretty robust backups as well. So, I mean, ZBrush is the one program that I can rely on in a crash. It'll pop back up again and say, hey, this was the terminated file, and it may be 2 minutes old. So whereas more archaic software like Maya this is a family podcast, I'm not going to say that. it can die quietly somewhere when it crashes. It's awful. So.
Okay.
So in that vein, like ZBrush is like great. It's just the like learning curve is like not easy.
Yeah, and Blender's more flexible as well. If you don't want to just do the sculpturing stuff, it kind of has other things. It does more traditional modeling tools, like you'd see in a more normal, I guess, traditional 3D package. You could even do 2D cell animation. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. There are some amazing resources online for that stuff. If anybody in chat is interested in any of this, we can post up some links and stuff to it somehow after the fact, or I don't know if you guys put up show notes.
Yeah, we do. So we can put a bunch of stuff.
I'm happy that I'll just reach out and I'll point you in the right direction. There's a whole host of stuff if you guys are interested in it. Again, and similar for the 3D. For the printing stuff.
So I guess related to that, say you do generate something in one of these programs, how easy is it to like take that and go and print it? Like if you have a printer, for instance, or like has that been streamlined? Like I'm pretty ignorant in all of this, but
it is. There's a lot of tools out there on the market that do it. There's the process is typically you finish the model, you export it as an STL or an OBJ file type, and then you're into another piece of software where basically you have to build all of the supports.
Yeah.
Okay. When you guys have seen those things coming off the printer, they've always got those supports on it. Because basically the whole thing prints upside down, and so it hangs from the build plate as the build plate kind of comes out of the vat. So you have to have any overhangs and stuff supported, otherwise you'll end up with printer printing an island and it just floats off into the resin. And then there's another chunk of software at the back end of that, which is the slicer, because a lot of the way a lot of these things work is they basically generate a whole bunch of black and white kind of images that just are exposed by a UV light once per layer, and then move, and once per layer, and move once per layer. And some of them work that way, some of them work with an actual laser light that kind of draws the shape. But there's always another piece of software in between that. So it's really like modeling in one place, doing your support somewhere else, and then slicing probably somewhere else. Although sometimes those last two steps are in the same thing. And then you push the whole thing to the printer, and then you pray that you've done it right.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking then 7 hours into a print, like looking in and realizing that there's nothing below this line and it's all floating somewhere else.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that sounds frustrating. But I mean, I guess with that in mind, you mentioned that the newer printer you have is a little bit easier to do. Has that made it such that for more of your recent modeling projects and stuff, are you using more of those components or such, or do they still tend to be just like other projects that you do in parallel to like kit bashing?
They're mostly other projects because I really love the challenge of just finding a solution to parts. It's really important, I think. Like, I'm not religious about it. I think there's sort of a certain amount of pride in just solving it, in the moment. And like, I will sit down and I will stare at a piece for hours. I used to, basically take works in progress wherever I was. So they'd be just sitting on my desk at work, and when I had a down moment, I would just be looking at it. There was a time before GW exploded that I felt like I had a really good mental model of most of the sprues that I was working with. Or at least I could kind of, happily, I think the job has built a pretty good visual memory for me. So I'm usually pretty good at saying, I could go to the Venom Throat sprue, and it's got this piece on it which is slightly bigger than the version that's on the Tyranid Warrior over here. And so I'll use that. You got to think your way through I think everybody gets that sort of, internal the pieces. Not these days, man. Like, I think once I started picking up some of the box sets because they were a cheap way of getting models, the wheels came off that idea. And then I reorganized my whole workshop so everything is just in big buckets by faction. So it's less about what kit it came from and more about like all the Tyranid arms are here and all the Tyranid heads are here.
Find the one that kind of most solves whatever need you have. Yeah, that's a cool way to do
trying to group stuff by kind of design language rather than a specific function, right? I mean, I think it's one of the things that, I feel like I've said it online somewhere before, but it was that thing about, maybe it was on the blog, back when I had the blog, but the idea of divorcing yourself from what the object is, from what the piece is, finding a way to forget what the name of it is and forget what the kit is and just assess it and turn it upside down and assess it and turn it sideways and assess it and start to build a new fiction for what the piece is. On the Kurovai, the shuriken cannon became the leg of the robot, and I remember a couple of people going, "Wow, I would have never thought of that." I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to making this process, which is pretty, I think, built in as part of the way I go about things. To share it with some people. I know everybody does this kind of stuff. It's not rocket science, and I'm not saying anything new, but I think it's just if ever you feel like you're stuck, for me, it's always because I'm trying to use something for the original purpose. Usually, I'm like, I'm satisfied with it.
I still feel it's not something that everybody realizes, though. Like you and Weirding Way in particular, I feel like doing a lot of the hobby community, like all the great things you can do with looking at a piece and not just, well, this was a gun on the original model, this has to be a gun. Like a lot of people, particularly if they're newer into it, don't consider that, it could be used for anything.
Definitely. I mean, Weirding Way is just one of my hobby heroes. I forget what he was doing. I think it was one of the Navigator House things, and it was like a larger mech, and I think he was using sort of just plastic containers and stuff.
Yes, like floss containers and crazy glue tubes and stuff.
And I tend to resist that, and I was trying to figure out like why I resisted it, and I realized it was like from the old pages of like White Dwarf terrain kit when, God love them, that was a straight up can of deodorant that somebody had painted blue on the table. Or like there was a speeder. I know a speeder model, and I swear it was like a roll-on deodorant like thing or something like that. And I was just, even as a kid, I think I was just like, that's not cool. Like I've seen the making of like Star Wars and stuff. Those guys now had a kit bash, like, and it was, I don't know, like that sounds really snobby, but there was something I was just like, and I think that I'm really trying more recently to sort of say, okay, well, maybe I should start taking that kind of stuff more seriously, because I would like to be as flexible in my approaches as possible, and it was definitely a blind spot for me.
Because I feel you certainly have the talent and just the general vision of looking at shapes and trying to see how you can reduce them and change them. Like, I think that vision and mindset would certainly make it very possible to do things with them.
And then there's the guilt of all the money was spent on the kits. So.
I gotta
get through the kits. You know,
the more pieces you can use out of them, you'll feel a little bit better.
that's an interesting one, I think, though, because I definitely have a size threshold. At some point, I will build to a point where it's just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's too big. I like the work at the back ends to sort of bring this one home starts to get really scary. I think the stuff, I think about as big as, I'm going to reach over and grab a model here, but like, this one is one of my Shane models, right? This is maybe the second or third kit bash thing that I was ever doing. It was like a Deathwatch flyer.
Yeah, that's a whole hell of a lot cooler than the.
I was so unhappy with the Storm insert now. Yeah, Storm Talon. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to build my own one. And this is one of those projects that was too big. And I'm like, I probably am never going to go back and do anything with this one.
Looks cool. It looks kind of like one of the flyer drop ships from Alien.
Yeah, that's definitely in my DNA, right? I think.
Well, but in general, it's just what I feel a lot of GW's Space Marine flyers, like they're so stubby and short. And like the thing you were like working on there, just like extending the fuselage a little bit out, like really makes it look more natural and like it could actually be a plane.
Right, and I think that was in the sweet spot before. I mean, whenever anybody asks me, like, I don't play. I've literally played 2 games of GW product in my entire life. The first when I was 15, and the second when I was 42. I played Warcry. One session of Warcry around my buddy's house last year, towards the tail end of last year, which was a ton of fun. And I actually painted up a warband, but it was all of that stuff. I've never really had a lot of sort of appreciation for the subtleties of the rules, and so I tend to build stuff that it's too big. It wouldn't work on a table, and okay, it doesn't. It's not. I'm happy if it gets people's brains going. The one thing that I get a lot of enjoyment from is how inspiring seeing other people's work on Instagram and Facebook groups and everywhere. It's really gets me excited to do something sometimes in response. I'm not going to lie. Like, one of the reasons I don't play games is because I am secretly ultra competitive and probably will tell awful person if I was actually playing on the regular. But that kind of stuff does inform me a little bit when I'm making stuff. If somebody comes up with something cool, I'm like, damn it, it's a better idea than I was having. And so it helps you sort of, I don't know, push yourself and find new ways to and find new ideas. And I think one of the things that has been important to me in my career has been I've been lucky enough to work with a few large IPs, Star Wars being one of them, and trying to find a different take on something that has as much history. As something like that does. I mean, it just slots right into my approach, I think, to the 40K stuff. Like, I dearly love 40K. It was one of those things that I just abandoned because I don't know. I didn't know who I was in my teens and 20s. Who the fuck I was, right? So I put it down, and I was 39, I think, when I picked it back up again, and it snapped back so hard. I'm like, oh my god, I love this, and I do. It's just it is. I can find so much room for maneuver in there, and so much inspirational stuff. From the community, probably more than GW, but that's just because I don't have time to keep up with the pace of stuff that's coming out of GW. I just don't.
That's true. They're releasing new stuff all the time, and I certainly remember years and years ago. Like, I feel I had a pretty good understanding and knowledge of every single component of all of the kits that they released, and now it's not even close because they release so much stuff at such a pace that it's ridiculous.
Well, I guess one thing is can you talk a little bit about some of the stuff you're working on now and what
we can bring up the picture of the demon thing?
Yeah, you can the demon thing, and I can. If anybody wants to squint in the corner of the screen, it's there he is. Bring up the picture because trying to see the fee on the feed is next to impossible, I would imagine.
Well, that's awesome.
And this is so you're working on creating like kind of like a demon thing for the 28 magazines demon challenge thing. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
So and this was all Cody Mega's fault, I guess. He was doing some super inspirational stuff. He's working on some amazing stuff right now. And I wasn't going to be in the headspace to do anything about it. And then, quarantine hit, and now I'm sort of at home, and I do have more time than I did before, though I'm not making the most of it, I guess. But my commute is 3 hours a day, so I get that back, and I was like, yeah, why not? And it was an opportunity to do something where, come up with your own demon, using for stuff, and
I love how you've incorporated like those like little wings in like the lower or like the back part of the fin thing. I don't know, whatever you want to call that. Like, that's great.
I'm going to be super sad when I'm out of those noble wings, because I think I've used them in every in the last little while. I love them. There's something about them that's just so versatile.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about sort of the inspiration and what your thought process was behind this demon thing?
Definitely. So this one took some turns. Originally, the concept was it was a demon called Innoon. It was the demon that will outlast the rest of the universe. There was a series of novels by a novelist called Stephen Baxter. They're called Space Time, and I forget the third one. But they basically explore kind of some science fiction options on a really, really long time scale. And one of the images that stuck in my head was, through a series of portals that slipped through time, some humans got to observe what the end of the universe actually looked like. And it was a bunch of Dyson sphere constructs around supermassive black holes, trying to absorb the last dregs of Hawking radiation as the universe died, as the universe ran down, while the scientists frantically looked for a way to sort of cheat the universe and jump over into the next one. And something about that stuck with me. It's just like, well, okay, all of the chaos demons are all well and good, but at some point there's going to be nothing left. And what if there was a demon who was playing the long game? And the demon, the demon shtick was about acquisition, about knowledge, about technology, mass, everything. Sort of like Tyranids on steroids. It wasn't just interested in biomass; it was interested in, I'm going to build a construct whereby I can survive the end of the universe and be the only thing left and be the ultimate power in the universe by just waiting it out. And then as I was researching that, got interested in some sort of, I went down a little bit of a math alleyway, trying to come up with some interesting sort of geometry shapes that tile weirdly in extra dimensional space, and just couldn't find a kind of angle into it. And so I was doing some stuff. I mean, you might have seen some of the sculpts, but I was doing the demon that's kind of like stuck in the in that sort of seven-sided.
Yeah. You had an Instagram story or two.
Yeah, I'll post that into the chat. If you guys.
And was that all digital sculpted stuff, I think?
Yeah, so that was like me trying to figure out where I wanted to go with it, and also to see if I could go digital to model. Like, could I go and explore the idea in digital and then come back to the model space and like. And make it, and ultimately it didn't really work, and I just wasn't happy with how it represented kind of the concept, and I wanted much more of something that felt like a bit more active. It was super passive. I wanted the idea that it was eating stuff and absorbing stuff, but I just wasn't getting enough kind of motion out of that. And I wanted something that was more sort of grasping, and something ultimately that was a bit more kind of traditionally kind of Lovecraftian inspired. But the secret to this one is that this is one arm of a seven-sided shape. So when they all come together, they will build one of those seven-sided shapes, and I will eventually, once this is finished, do a mock-up in ZBrush of what that would look like. So they're basically everything's getting absorbed, and they're going to build all these shapes, and they're going to assemble all of these shapes around a supermassive black hole, and they're just going to wait for everybody else to die.
That sounds awesome.
And as I was saying to Cody, like, because I always give him a hard time. Like, I'm not really into like the whole grimdark thing.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to do it, what's the grimmest, darkest thing I can think of? And so, just awful, cold waiting and in the void where there's literally nothing. I can't think of anything more
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe the quarantine's got to me, right? It's people.
Yeah. Well, like if the digital sculpture thing here, like let's say like you were more satisfied with it or whatnot, did you have any intent of like trying to print this or get this to work in that capacity?
Yeah, and I still am going to try and print that. I think I need to adapt it for the scale. I think that one currently is probably about 6-inch scale would work on my printer. I would simplify the crap out of that, and I actually want to. Since that image posted, I've been working on it and bringing it a little bit more in line with the sort of aesthetic of the physical model, so it's a little bit more organic. In some of the shapes, and I think it's going to be a little better. But yeah, I want that sort of the feeling that this thing is literally an amalgamation of whatever was in its path. It's
Yeah. Okay. So that's awesome. And it's neat. It's really cool and sort of inspiring to hear how you kind of shift between doing physical like kit bashing and stuff and like working with digital sculpting from kind of your career and like training and such, and I think that's really cool.
I'm lucky to have that sort of background. I think sometimes it feels a bit like hobby cheating.
I feel you make such good use of it that it's not like you're not like relying just on that. You're like taking elements of different things. It's kind of like sometimes people like complain about like things like for painting, like airbrushing, like, oh, that's cheating or whatever. But like anyone who really takes advantage of it, it's not like they're just doing that one thing or like that airbrush solves all their problems.
Yeah.
They use that and other tools and bring it all together such that like it's synergistic and it's greater than sort of the sum of the individual parts.
And it's learning and curiosity, right? Like, go out and try it. If you can lay hands on that stuff, and I know not everybody can afford stuff like airbrushes, but like find interesting new things to kind of get stuck into. Like I'll shit on green stuff my whole life. I hate it, but go try it because some people do incredible stuff with it. I'm looking at you, ModSynth, in the chat. Yeah, I want that mojo, please. I will find you and I will eat your brains and I will learn how you know. But it's again, I just don't think being dismissive of any of that stuff is useful. It's always out of I'm comfortable doing it my way, and I'm seeing somebody get results because in a different way. And I wish I was maybe as good as that, or maybe it's an NV thing. But I think like you said, the 40K universe is big enough, and the hobby community is big enough. Like, just go try as many things as you can until you find something that works for you. Because otherwise, you'll bounce off the hobby, and that would be a shame.
I agree.
Imagine like if somebody had said you do not get to post Instagram until you finish painting. Like you would never.
Oh God!
You would never see me again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear that. I mean, it took me like 20 years to paint a model, so it's
you got to come to it in your own time. That's just what it is. But it is, to go back to sort of the 3D print stuff. Yeah, I mean, once that thing would be sort of appropriate scale, I'd like to field maybe like 2 or 3 different units in this sort of demon army. I know that the brief is only for 1, but I've got too many ideas running around my head that I need to get out. So there's that.
Yeah, no, the more the better.
What else we got? This other stuff I'm working on right now. We've got. I don't think I can send a photo of this. How big is this going to actually show up on the chat on the actual feed?
It's not super big. It's pretty small.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody can see that. So it's like a psycho I've been working on with the sort of massive sort of psychic augmentation. I'll post some pickies of this stuff up. That's been doing the rounds for a bit. This one, which is a complete sideways take, is a sort of mobile suit drop mech thing that I'm working on right now. It's been sitting in my garage for a little bit.
That's cool. That's awesome. Is the idea that like the fuselage wing stuff, that's something that then drops the mech in?
Yeah, it's like a rapid deployment, like
so that
shops on the front. So
Yeah.
Like Mecha and stuff, are you like a fan of like Gundam or you had mentioned Macross and Robotech at the beginning, like
so I am not. I wouldn't say in any way a fan of anime as a genre. You can see my Gundam Shame image. I just posted it in the chat. If you, if you can let
Full
people.
Metal Panic's there too.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. And with full disclosure, I know next to nothing about 90% of the anime that I borrow toys from. But I absolutely adore, and this goes back to the Robotech RPG in the 80s. I absolutely fell in love with the. And when I look back at it now, they're bad sort of copies of the original art, but there was the black and white drawings of the Veritechs, like the VF1s and the 1Ss and the Js and all that kind of stuff. And then all of the Destroids and a whole bunch of stuff there. And I absolutely love a lot of mechanical design coming out of a lot of that anime. I mean, like Evangelion was a big touch point for some of the Eldar stuff I was doing.
oh yeah, Evangelion. You can finally watch it again on Netflix. Like at least the American localization.
Right.
You didn't have it for like 10 years or something.
That show was fucked up, so I don't know. But so there is an element of like those kind of designs, and a lot of that stuff is, I know Robotech basically took 15 different anime and sort of themselves. I don't know all the reference points. God, I don't even begin to know what all the original kind of reference points are, but there's some Soji Kamamori, the original kind of mech designer for Macross, and then any of the a lot of Miyazaki's. I know it's just a different sort of genre as well, but like Miyazaki's kind of inventiveness, and kind of diesel punk, steampunk stuff, and then his things like Spirited Away, the creature design and stuff in those is just. I think a lot of what appeals to me even about the GW stuff, because I've lived in America for going on 13 years now, and I've been, when I worked on Star Wars, it's that Western American design aesthetic. It's that Hollywood design aesthetic, and a lot of that stuff is very. It has a box that it exists in. One of the things that always appealed to me about, particularly the early days of Games Workshop, is how much of a Wild West it was, just in terms of the artists that were contributing. I mean, let's be honest, the talent level of some of the people who were contributing, it was more about the idea than the execution. But wow, the idea was really good. It's the same thing. That's the reason I loved. I play a fair bit of Dungeons and Dragons. I DM it for my kids. We have a group that plays at work, and I got to read the art and Arcana, the collected art of Dungeons and Dragons, and the early stuff in there is just so rich with batshit ideas because the people that came up with it weren't classically trained.
Yeah.
Looking back at a medieval manuscript of a depiction of a demon, you're like, holy shit, I would never come up with that because my brain has just been trained over the years that this is what the client will accept. And so I think GW, even to this day, it has a cool aesthetic and doesn't really toe the line with that stuff, and has a sort of, it's not a goofiness, but it's a uniqueness to some of the things they do. And it's getting more and more kind of polished, but the ideas are still super weird. Particularly things like the Mechanicum and Mechanica stuff. This is cool. It comes from nowhere, and I feel the same way when I look at a lot of Miyazaki stuff. Is just it comes from a slightly different place. It's the diesel punk, steampunk thing with things like Castle in the Sky. But it's just through a different lens, and I love it, and it's super refreshing, and that feels like a break from my day job.
Well, that's what you're doing with Warhammer. You're taking stuff that people who've been in Warhammer for a while, they have a good notion of what they think all the things should look like, and you're taking those and giving a fresh viewpoint to them. So you're doing what Miyazaki does to Warhammer.
Well, I think that's a bit much, but I appreciate the comment. That's very kind.
Well, I mean, I feel
I'm
like
going to secretly write that down and then never show anybody.
well, I mean, I feel like you're like different work more recently on like the different Eldar, like your digital sculpted ones and your conversions with like Tyranid components and stuff. Like, I feel just about anyone would look at that and know like immediately that that is like an Eldar or like warrior or something. But if you really look at it, a lot of the design elements and the visual things are very different than like the direction Games Workshop has gone in, and like I really like that. And like, for instance, like the little Bone Reaper Eldar challenge thing we did, like a lot of it is sort of inspired by some of your work.
Are still doing.
Yeah, we're still.
Dude, I'm still doing it, and I'm struggling with that model like you would not believe, but we'll come back to it in a bit. I think the important thing there is just, and I think the reason that model just sort of ended up working was it's that big, medium, small shape design solving, right? And the big shape with Eldar is just, it's basically, pretty simple. Yeah, there's spikes and they have a lot of their sort of runes written in the stars, but when you really boil it down, it's graceful shapes, it's simple, there's not a lot of straights against curves. And if you get that, you can kind of go hog wild in the interior, I think. Overlapping plates. And when you really break it down, I mean, I think it might have been Mr. Pinkpoint there. It's like they're both, I think, essentially Jez Goodwin originated kind of things.
Yeah.
So
like the Eldar and the Tyranids and such.
And so I think there's just something in the way that he approaches shapes that helps them kind of fit together. I've always been an Eldar fan, so I felt like that's just if I had effed that up, then I would be super mad at myself, and I'm happy that it came out as good as it did, and that it has been as inspirational as it has. I mean, again, I just like it when I see people doing cool shit, and it's super exciting and humbling and amazing to sort of have been in any way a little bit of an inspiration for that. And seeing everybody's takes on that stuff coming out is really interesting. The Bone Reaper thing, to go back to that, is like, I was unprepared for how much I was going to stuff the landing on that one. It was working with the parts felt like it should just work. And I keep fighting it. There's too much going on in there. I feel like I just basically built a xenomorph, and I was mad at myself for that. And so I've been going back and trying to get more of the Eldar shapes back into that design. I'm not ready to show it yet. You can't see it.
Okay.
But it is getting better. But yeah, that was an example of me just not following the rules I had in my head, and just, I think, being too slavish to the kit and trying to incorporate too much of the kit.
Like you almost, it's hard. I mean, I know, looking at a lot of the Bone Reaper range and stuff, it's like, wow, these would work great for Eldar. And then like trying to really incorporate it and just kind of use the models themselves without like a lot of work can be tricky. And like I felt it was hard for me as well with the only model I made.
It's something that's definitely got more difficult as the multi-part kits have become more intricate in terms of how they're constructed. I definitely miss you can give me Calth Marines all day and I can use those bits. And much as I love how dynamic the sculpts become, they're harder to work with. There's no doubt about it. I did my bits box. I really regret not assembling everything before I threw it in the bits box, because 9 times out of 10, I'm going to find the bits, assemble it, and then cut it to pieces again. Because it's the way they don't make any sense in my brain in terms of how they slot together anymore. So.
Yeah, I kind of feel that sort of speaks back to sort of the accessibility of it. Like, I almost feel like one of the reasons why Games Workshop has shifted to this slightly more defined how they assemble is because they're thinking that for people to get into the hobby, they want it to go together easily, look really good, whereas like some of the older multi-part stuff, like it was pretty easy to assemble them and they look kind of like garbage because the pose is really wonky, or like you just didn't quite do it right. And the new ones, like you can't really mess that up.
Yeah.
And I think if you're just assembling on them stock, like they look better because of that, but if you want to do like conversion stuff and just are interested in the shapes and whatnot, it is harder.
Yeah. But still great stuff is coming out, and I feel like the possibilities with the parts are amazing. One of the things I think I've struggled with a little bit, I went through, and it's going to sound a bit not big-headed, but it's like as an accident of fate. Like I felt like I got really good at True Scale Marines, and then Primaris dropped. Like I felt like I was nearly done with the Deathwatch ship, and then the fucking Deathwatch ship dropped. Like I'm always in the way. I'm always just like, oh damn it, And then I was just like, I felt like I'm getting a handle on the Eldar, and then they like, oh, maybe some Howling Banshees. You give me, either just hire me or, and I know that they work on this stuff years and years in advance. But the quality has come up so much. I actually find that a lot of what drove me when I first started getting back into it was the sort of urge to sort of make what was here fit the image of what was in my head. But increasingly I find that the stuff that's coming out of there does kind of fit. Like I know we all complain about weapon scale and weird posing and weird dynamic stuff going on, but like the quality jump in recent years is not insignificant. And I actually I think it may be one of the things that has pushed me further and further away from the canon.
Yes.
I feel like there's quite so much stuff to do in there that hasn't been done or isn't being done or isn't, you have a really good starting point to go for. And I'm just not super interested in head swaps because I don't play, it needs to be something else.
Like I don't care. I don't care if the box doesn't have enough plasma guns to equip the entire unit. It doesn't matter to me at all.
But again, I think in terms of the glory days of the hobby, it's pretty awesome. I just I can't stay ahead of it, and I'm kind of like there was a time when I was trying to get most boxes that came out, but then I think it was around the time that Adeneth Deepkin came out. I was like, this is ridiculous. What the hell do I need a shark for?
I don't need a bunch of sharks and whales.
I always need a shark, but what the hell? Like
that's awesome.
But yeah, so I think it's an embarrassment of riches right now. Super inspiring.
Well, I guess we've been talking for a little while now. Maybe we want to start thinking about at least wrapping the podcast portion of this up.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Maybe I have like one or two more questions. Like this is sort of a nebulous, broad one, but is there anything in the hobby that you kind of regret not having done earlier, like using some particular tools or whatever?
I regret not just being in the hobby earlier. I really feel like I missed a lot of time that I would like to have spent before I had kids doing that stuff. I did other art projects. Nothing has really resonated for me the way that just working with miniatures does. Outside of my day job, it is the thing that I will get up excited to do in the morning. And then you'll find me, while the kettle's boiling so I can have a cup of tea, I'll be in the garage sanding something or gluing myself to something else. I think, all of that stuff is I wish I'd prioritized that stuff. In terms of things I haven't done yet that I wish I'd already done, I really want to try etching metal parts. Okay. I want to try getting, I have this weird vision in my head of an ultra detailed 75 millimeter Adeptus priestess modeled after Pakistani wedding jewelry. That's not going to be a reference that lands for anybody, but if you're interested, I have Pinterest boards coming out of my ass for this stuff. There's an Instagram account of a really, really talented clothing designers. I'm just going to blank on the name here. If I can, where are we? I'm gonna mess this up. I'll put it in the thing. But Agnieszka Osipa, who does these incredibly intricate beaded headdresses and outfits, and they are an alternate take on what sort of Mechanicus, Star Mechanicus would look like for me.
Okay.
Lots of jewelry sort of attaches to the nose and stuff like that. But I wanted to do like something that was in metal etch so that I could really go nuts on the detail. But I'm kind of scared of the process, so one day I'll get there and do it.
Yeah, I can't say I know anything about that process, but I mean, there's always something exciting you can learn and explore, and maybe bridge and make it more common for like more hobbyists in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I think. But other than that, it's mostly just I feel like I lost time that I could have been spending on hobby.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I don't regret too much usually, or I carry the regret forever.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to be forward and future thinking, right?
Yeah, I think it's more that I just sort of like suppressed that side of my.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, you're here now. Like at least you found your way back, right?
Exactly, and it's been again super welcoming. So.
Yes, and that's really great. Well, I mean, in general, it's been really awesome talking with you. Like, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Like, it's been really fun, and like I feel we've talked through like Instagram and stuff like that, but it's nice to actually like talk like between one another.
Likewise, I hope I didn't ramble on for too long.
No, it's been great. I kind of with that, do you have any like last things you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to plug or anything of that nature?
I don't know. For hobby stuff, I don't really have too many like projects. One of the things I'm interested in getting feedback on is if there's any value in kind of maybe some tutorial stuff. And there's 1,000,001 tutorials about how to do the craft of the hobby. I'm curious to see if anybody has any interest in the other side of it, the creative process. I know that can be a bit highfalutin and grandiose sounding, but there's, for people that are kind of interested in pushing out further into the creative space, and I feel like there's some intersection of my skill set where I could kind of help.
I think people want to hear that. I want to hear that. Write articles for the 28 magazine.
Oh man, I turned them down twice. I feel bad. Like, all right, maybe I will. Maybe I will this time. Damn it! If anybody on this listening, I never said that, and I didn't commit to anything.
Yeah.
I don't know who's in the chat. I'm terrified now. God damn it. I with the full disclosure with that, like they did approach me to do a thing, and at the time, I mean, I go through waves of loving the hobby and kind of falling out of love it.
Yeah.
I love a little bit with it, and unfortunately, the times they've hit me up, I've been like, nothing I do is any good, and I take a break, which is another reason that I'm not always active. But I think like everybody kind of feels that stuff. But I'm definitely looking for an opportunity to get more kind of involved in helping in the sort of community, and just trying to bring whatever my particular creative skill set is, and hopefully there's some new stuff in there that people maybe haven't heard before. So stay tuned for that this year. I'll probably be reaching out to a bunch of people in the community to help and just kind of figure out what people are interested in. But hit me up on Instagram if you have ideas about the kinds of things you'd like to hear. Other than that, I have more projects than I know what to do with, but none of which are really worth plugging because they're just ideas.
Yeah, well, I mean, so that's good. It's good to have lots of ideas and things you're working on that you can kind of switch back and forth as like kind of a muse or something takes you.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a danger in never finishing anything with
that. That is certainly the concern.
But that's my MO, damn it. Never finish anything. Just keep starting.
Yeah.
Well, I feel one thing that I think would be kind of neat to try and do is to have like more collaborative projects and stuff. Like I know, like just like someone builds something, other people paint it, etc. Like I think a lot of that kind of is a neat way to kind of get different artists and stuff to bring their own visions and takes on things. So like the more collaborations, the better. And so like I feel that's sort of one of the goals that we've sort of had, and we've tried to do that. But I feel like the more of that can happen, probably the better, because I think in many regards, a lot of the stuff that you're doing with the hobby, it's very much like you yourself kind of slaving away by yourself, and then but the interaction with the rest of the community and other hobbyists and stuff like that, in many regards, is one of at least my favorite aspects about the hobby in general.
Yeah, I mean, I go 50-50 on that as well. You know, I'm introvert, extrovert, extrovert. I don't know. Like, what am I? I don't know. Sometimes all y'all can stay away.
It's good to have a good balance.
But I tell you, 4 weeks in quarantine, I'm ready for some human contact.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean looking shit at people in Safeway, you know? So.
Yeah, no, I certainly hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, all right. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on this evening, and it'd be great to have you on again at some point, perhaps to talk about a finished project or anything for that
never going to happen, but I appreciate the sentiment. Yeah. I'll be here. The project won't. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a couple new ones, right?
Yeah, always new ones.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on again, and thanks everybody for listening. And I guess we will talk to you again soon. All right, well, so that's the podcast portion. We can still talk a little bit about this or that, or potentially answer more questions in the chat, that sort of thing, but
I don't know. I think just in general, like any thought process, any idea talking about like what you think about anything, like I think there will be people interested in all of that, because I think everyone kind of comes at the hobby in different ways and gets ideas from different things. So like anything like that, there will certainly be people who are interested in it. In sort of any means, whether it's like through podcasts or blog posts or Instagram stories, whatnot, like people will be interested in it. And I mean, like it's neat to see like your Instagram profile, like it sort of goes in waves with you posting stuff, but it's like great to see that you're just constantly working on new projects and ideas and stuff, that like all of that is just, it's inspirational to just kind of see that and get a sense of like how you work on things. Like I feel everything that I do is kind of almost like it's such a slow pace. Like I feel as I've gotten...
That's because you're a slave to green stuff.
Well, yeah, I think that's it. Because like as I've gotten further and further into the hobby, it's like instead of trying to make pieces and stuff work for me, it's like now it's almost more like, well, I'll try and sculpt that now. And like green stuff is like, in many regards, it's like painfully slow. It's like you do some work and it's like, you know what, I better stop, because if I don't stop, I'm gonna ruin it. It's gonna be ruined. And so that in that regard, that was sort of why I was, that's one of the reasons why I was thinking I want to start looking more into that, because it might help with some of my creativity and just like doing things a little faster. Mr. Pink says, come on, man. Green stuff is meant to speed up the process. No time to go back and second guess. Just go. Yeah, I mean, like, and I feel I like belabor every little detail. It's like, well, you know what? That's not right. I'll start reworking it the next day. And like, so I don't know. I think my process of going about things is just very different. And in some regards, it almost like sometimes discourages me.
I think it's just, I don't know. I find it super unforgiving. I don't like people to rush me, and I definitely don't like my tools to rush me.
No,
stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
but I mean, you get amazing stuff out of it, and I'm not saying that, you know, there's no I mean, there's Aves and all these other kind of putties, but the concept of like a two-part pure putty that just eventually sets on your model is, unless you really want to melt your model, there's no other way to really go about it, So I guess where I think with green stuff, it just doesn't want to behave itself, and it sticks to everything. And I know Mr. Pink's going to give me shit for this. Like, yes, just put Nivea or some shit on the tools.
That helps so much.
But with Aves, I find like I just dip my brush. I can finish it with water, right? I can get the feathering to be or Magic Sculpt, whichever one's more soluble in the water, right? You can really get that. Whenever I do the two-part blend, like the green stuff, the green stuff, I eventually get to this dilution point where the green stuff is just is suspended in this like Aves soup. I'm like, nah, and it gets really weird on me. So I think I'm an Aves man, but green stuff still. I think I used green stuff on that fairy no-go.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of neat how I feel, despite your maybe dislike of it, I feel a lot of your models it's interesting to see like, oh, it's primarily like kit bash this, but oh, there's some modeling work there, or I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, you're a great physical sculptor. Like,
it's so small, man. Like when I see what Adam, I see what you do with the green stuff, and like you've got buckles and straps.
Yeah.
Oh god, it makes me tired just like looking at it, And it's like I am so in awe of your patience with that stuff. And who cares if it takes a long time, man? It looks amazing, and I am an impatient person by nature, and so a lot of the reason I get myself into these green stuff pickles is because I didn't spend enough time cutting the parts nicely to begin with.
I hear that.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like more recently from like talks with other hobbyists like Colonel and such, like I finally got like a little razor saw and whatnot, and like my god, like I should have had one of those like 15 years ago, because for certain things like they just work so well. Not for everything, but like my god, they're so good. So like having the right
trying
tool
to
for
make
the
a flush cut with an X-Acto knife is horrible.
Yeah, just deform everything and like so it's like really having the right tool for the job is super important, and I feel figuring out what those right tools are isn't necessarily that easy. Like I know, like I feel it's probably easier than ever. Like if you're just starting with Games Workshop and stuff, like they have a whole host of tools and stuff, and a lot of the stuff they offer will get you pretty far. But like there's so much stuff out there, and just having a way to find out about it is important and can be really hard, because like for instance, like the three of us, we've been doing stuff for so long, and like I only got one of these razor saws like a few months ago. It's like, how did that ever how did that even happen?
Right. I think I only have one because for some reason in this neck of the woods, there's no shortage of hobby places. There's a place called Trains, Dollhouses and More, which is like a model train and dollhouse thing. But they also have a whole bunch of like scenic stuff and loads of styrene and all that kind of stuff. I'm always in there looking for stuff. And I was just literally buying a box of number 11 X-Acto blades because sometimes I wanted it in shape. And there was a razor saw hanging next to it. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll try it.
Yeah. So like I feel me growing up with the hobby, like there were almost weren't stores around us that like had stuff like that. And like I feel just being able to go to a place that just has a weird collection of stuff, like if you've been working on stuff for a long time, it's just like walking through, it's like, wow, that would work great for this or that, and like it's very nice.
One of the sort of resources I think for me has been, again, the scale model group and the Gundam builders, especially the Gundam customizing guys on YouTube. I don't know if this will show up, but for the putty conversation that's going on in the chat, this Tamiya putty is a game changer for me. It's like it cures really quickly, and you can dilute it with styrene cement. literally the glue you use to glue the parts together dilutes the stuff, and that's how I did the texture on the shaman, the little neon robot guy. Because you can water it down with styrene cement and then sort of dab it on, and it gives you this kind of stippled stone texture.
Wow, that sounds awesome. So I need to get some of this.
I think you have to. I mean, I ordered my stuff from Amazon. I think it comes from Japan. It's just to me, it's great value. It cures in like minutes. It's great for filling gaps. And yeah, if you're working primarily in plastic, which increasingly I tend to avoid anything that isn't plastic these days. It works because the bond is super strong. Everything is kind of based off the same goop underneath. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
it's no good for actually sculpting with. It's only good for filling or texture. But it's like a liquid green stuff that actually works a bit thicker.
That's cool.
Yeah, to me it makes a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, I feel like there's the stuff that we even. I mean, there's like Mr. Surfacer. There's a range of I think they're like enamel or something based primers, things like that. I mean, the Gundam community has a whole different like set of priorities, right? They want paint that won't flake off when you bend the Gundam and repose it, so everything's enamel.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff. And, but there's always good stuff to be found in all that stuff.
Yeah, so I feel the more broadly you look and search, like there's always something to learn and potentially improve your craft. Yeah. I must say, if you do ever like design and print any of those demon things, like I would help you finish a project and paint one of those things for you.
All right. Well, anybody? Okay, here we go. Anybody who's in the chat who wants a demon? Yeah.
But yeah, like I mean,
that's my mini challenge. Print my shit, like paint my shit. I can't be bothered.
Yeah. Yeah, I would paint one of your models.
Yeah, right. I still owe you guys the Eldar as well. That guy's ready for print. I should print him out.
Oh, cool. Yeah. But yeah, damn. Nah, I mean, so yeah, I think. Well, so one of the things like on our actual blog, we have a thing for like hobby tools and stuff we use. Like, I feel like every few years we go back and like update it and add stuff. Like, I feel like we probably need to go back and do that again because there's a lot of stuff that's I feel has become increasingly important to me that I feel I didn't really know about not that long ago.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Well, so actually, I have another question. Like, do you have like a hobby work desk that you work on? Like how, like you said, like as you pull out your pieces and stuff, you just start working at the next small space where there's room and stuff. Like,
yeah, I have in the garage. I have a 3-desk sort of setup.
Okay.
We rent this place. I've never been able to fully customize it because we rent, but I have like a painting station sort of behind me where there's a desk behind me kind of there. My construction station is in front of me, and then on this side is where the 3D printing stuff is. So
okay, that's good. Like,
I try and keep things like separated. If I have the luxury of space, I will grow to fill whatever space is available.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, like where I do the painting and building, it's all at the same general area, so it's like it's hard to move between the two very easily. So it's like,
yeah, like it's hard.
I've most of my time recently was spent like sculpting and building and stuff, and like I'm trying to with this Eldar model, I'm trying to like start actually painting again, and like I don't know, like it's hard to really get into it, and it would be nice if I didn't have to switch between all the stuff, because any small barrier
can prevent you from doing it.
Yeah, I hear that. Like one of the things I think is that became super apparent to me was just like my setup for sculpting is the opposite of what I want out of a setup for painting. Like when I'm sculpting, I want a very specific light source that casts a lot of shadows and lets me see the forms really nicely.
Oh,
And as soon as I'm painting, I'm like, I don't want this anymore. Like, and so my painting space has got more lights on it, and it's actually white, so that it bounces as much light as possible. And
That's cool.
And the sculpting station is a single overhead lamp that I compose with a black work surface to try and keep that readable.
Yeah,
for me.
that's good. That makes sense. But
I mean, I can only use it for like 3 months out of the year because it's either freezing cold or 103. So that's spring and like a week in autumn. That's about as much as I can like bear to be out there because there's no AC and there's no heating. That's my excuse for not airbrushing more. It's too cold. Too hot.
Yeah, well,
An excuse.
I literally since I'm just in an apartment, for my airbrush, I literally just put like a big thing of like foam core on my like computer desk, the desk I'm like sitting at front of now, and like just spray there. And since I only like spray like on a single model for a short time, like you don't really even have to ventilate it much, but it's kind of pathetic.
Well, the secret is that I have a workshop in the garage, but I do most of my work at the dining table. And when we move out and we move the dining room table, we're going to discover exactly how much green stuff is in the carpet.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Stuff. There's post attack. There's I don't know. I think it's half a bottle of like bronze paint went over somewhere there. It's a bad scene down there. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
I want to hang out with the family, and my kid tolerates it and is kind of interested in it, and she's done a little bit of painting of stuff. And
that's cool.
Well, so you said you're big into you have a soft spot for like RPG books and stuff, and like you had mentioned that how Kickstarter has a ton of them. Like that's certainly something that I've been noticing recently, like an outrageous number of different RPGs on Kickstarter that sound neat that I feel compelled to back, but I'll probably never play.
Ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, I'm like drive-through RPG is my wallet nemesis sometimes as well. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously D&D is my first love, and second edition I think was the first time I played it. And again, I had a bit of a break, and then fifth edition, and I jumped back into that. What have been Zweihander, the sort of Warhammer fantasy, I guess I like. Symbaroum. I haven't played that, but I
just bought the book for that.
That's amazing. Do you got? For a while there, I was just kind of following Adam Koebel's
oh yeah, he's great.
And just like looking at the same stuff.
World. He wrote or helped write Dungeon World.
Yeah, Dungeon World. That's right. Yeah. I like to. I watch. I think. Yeah, I watch some actual play stuff, not too much. I watched the the Penny Arcade one for a bit. It's kind of funny. CT one because it's just it's D&D light, But yeah, mostly I love a good rule book and I love a good source book, and I love the setting more than I love the rules of it. I'm always curious about any of that stuff.
That's what I like a lot about Morkborg. The rules are really light, but I like the setting and the background and stuff. And I know you said you kind of get tired of all the super grim, and that's kind of what Morkborg is. But
yeah, but I like the way it's presented. I love the design of that.
Yeah, that's so
the
cool.
visuals so good. And it's just like it kind of feels like, if you took. It's like grimdark Adventure Time or some shit. Like there's an element of that, or it has that almost like pop style aesthetic, but it's like unrelentingly grim as well. So I think I'm just looking for the fresh takes on that stuff.
Ultraviolet Grasslands. Are you familiar with that?
I have not read that one, but my buddy at work has been trying to recommend some stuff in that direction.
I just bought the book for that on Drive-Thru RPG and didn't really read through it yet, but it looks cool. There's so much stuff. Outrageous amount.
But
Do you derive much information from like cinema and such? Do you like watching movies and such, like that sort of thing? Is that
we do watch a lot of movies. For a while, it was a lot of kids' movies, and now it's a lot of us showing my daughter the movies we were into when we were kind of growing up.
Yeah, that's cool.
Trying to get that one under her belt before she becomes too independent and doesn't want to know what we like anymore. Obviously, movies have been a huge part of my personal and professional kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
My wife works in TV and movies. She's worked at Star Wars. She worked on a whole bunch of stuff for them, TV shows and things like that, and Episode 9. So she's the successful, talented one. But Star Wars in our house is the original trilogy is our holy grail, and I think it's always been part of my DNA on some level. I'm not. It's not what it once was, in the same way that Master of Puppets isn't the best album in the world anymore, but it was at one point, right?
Yeah.
I have that that same kind of relationship with that. I tend to gravitate towards TV more than I do movies now. I will go and see a big movie if I think there's something interesting visually. There's only a couple that I think I've missed. I haven't seen the Ghost in the Shell live action, mostly because I love Ghost in the Shell, the anime. That is probably the one. Standalone Complex was the one kind of thing that I was like, holy shit, I'm really into this, and I didn't expect to.
It was really good.
I just wished Matoka wore pants in the show.
Yeah, I know. I get it, definitely. It has not without its problems, but I just something about that show.
She wore fucking pants.
I just couldn't figure out why the little Fuchikoma thing was in the middle of it. All right, I don't know. Again, I think it comes to that. It's just a fresh take on something that but in terms of movies, we try and see pretty much all of them big ones. I don't know, in terms of mood and aesthetic, there's all kinds of stuff you draw from. One of the ones that really got to me was the I think it was 2015, was Macbeth with what would we call it? The guy who plays young Magneto. What's his name? Fassbender. And it is just visually amazing. The use of saturated color and heavy smoke in the combat. There's a whole sequence where they're fighting. I was just like, wow, I wasn't expecting this. We just turned it on because it was on streaming, and we're like, okay, we'll try it. It's got Fassbender in it. See if he's any good. And it was genuinely visually just one of the things that just blew me away. I think in terms of inspiration visually, movies don't tend to get me geared up because the problem solving has been done.
Yeah.
I think this reading is a big one for me. Dune is a big touchstone for me. Obviously, it's the real 40K for me.
Yeah.
The culture novels, because I just like massive ideas of what far future humanity might be like. And what I like about that is that it's a novel that is about the clash of cultures, but there's so many stories that get told in that. It's really inspiring for me to look at that and say,
yeah,
that in 40K, this in 40K, it can exist. It should be there. There's so many pockets in that galaxy, in that universe. There's stories about the AIs that fly the ships, and there's police procedural stories in that universe. It's an incredible sort of range of stuff. There's novels, like I said, and then anime designs. I think a lot of my art heroes tend to be production design or illustrating guys.
Okay.
Sid Mead, he just passed, but he was huge. Mobius might be my favorite visual designer of all time. Again, because it's got that European clear line kind of a feel to it. It just doesn't look like other stuff.
Yeah.
When I saw it, it didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before. And it's just this wellspring of just incredible draftsmanship and incredible ideas and incredible world building. And I can enough of that stuff. And then anybody associated with the Aliens franchise in any way, I think Ron Cobb is a legend. Giga definitely is on the list. He's not my first choice, but everybody owes a debt to him on some level, right?
Yeah.
And, early 20th century illustrators, J.C. Landecker and N.C. Wyeth, and then like the pulp kind of sci-fi kind of pulpy kind of guys, John Berkey and those guys. They're all inspiration. So it's usually things I see in the world that translate. I find that movies are too soft.
Actually, Vox asked if you play many video games, Dave.
It is my job to do so. Part of my job. Yeah, I do play a lot of video games. I play a lot of video games. Is there a follow-on question from that? Because
is there something that you're playing now that's cool that you think is cool and
yeah, I can't talk about that one.
Or it's like stuff that's been released, like
stuff that I've been playing in recent memory, like Horizon Zero Dawn. For me, I actually just went back and finally finished it and 100%ed it and all the DLC because I had some time. Is one that is just like, man, I love the gameplay, I love the world, the setting, the character design. Wow, literally cannot. I want more content in this world. And that comes, I mean, I'm heavily influenced by that. There's no question. Like in my animals as Max phase, whenever I'm on that, that I have to be very careful about that stuff because it's very front of mind and it's for some reason it locks in. There is an incredible, actually, in that direction. There's an incredible Instagram artist, Darren Bartley. He goes by Fight Punch on Instagram. If you want to look him up.
Okay. Is it Flight Punch?
Fight, Fight Punch. He's got this this world that he's working on. I forget the name. It's called Tribal, and it's a lot of mechs inspired by it. And it's and he's like he is my favorite Instagram artist person, just because of the batshit originality of some of the shit he's coming out with. Like he's got a dung beetle that rolls a giant ball, and he's got it's I don't know, something about his aesthetic and his creativity is just right in my wheelhouse.
Stuff looks cool.
Really imagine him like blowing up and becoming super famous. But that all of that kind of stuff is super inspiring. Obviously, the hobbyists, you guys, all the people that we've mentioned before, I'm terrible with names, but like everybody in the Ink and the AOS 28 community, Bits of Box, who kind of emerged relatively recently. I think Mr. Pink knows him. Inspiring. In Grimson, I want, like, I don't know how that guy churns out the stuff.
It's like crazy.
Oh my god, it's just like, and yeah, I find his stuff a little bit overwhelming sometimes. It's just like he's so detailed. And then like at the opposite end of the spectrum, I like goofy takes on stuff. I like Savage Orc guy. I think the neon squats. Gotta love that. And like Dave Colwell, I really appreciate the style. Like I just like that approach to painting, how it's lighting based, but it's more like a kind of an ambient occlusion kind of take on lighting. It's not super directional. And having more people that can manage that on a model as what, because for me, I'm all about the sculpt, and if I'm constantly amazed at how much people can change how the sculpt reads just by paint. Not something I ever really considered as a part of the process up until rejoining the hobby. It blows my mind. And, like, I thought the form was set in stone, but apparently with a bit of paint, you can just trick my eye into thinking this is a whole different shape.
So, no, I mean, it's true. Like, I feel like I'm trying to think more about like lighting and stuff and how that can kind of read on a model, because like I feel I haven't done a whole lot of that, and so I'm trying to do a little of that on the Eldar model that I'm painting. We'll see how it turns out.
Well, so I was watching an artist, a Lancaster artist, so near where I live, like for a painting she was doing to figure out like where the lighting would be on stuff. She like quickly sculpted up a version of what she was painting and then shined a light on in the direction that she wanted to get a better idea of exactly where the light would go to then paint it.
Yeah,
Like that's going all out. Like, all right, how am I going to paint this the best? Well, I'll sculpt it first.
well, I think, but you can see I've definitely tried something not dissimilar to that, where I've primed the model, and then I put a light in it and I take loads of photos. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
And then I would try and replicate it on the model, and I just can't. I can't divorce myself from the ambient lighting in the room. I'm just never going to be good at that directional paint style. Unless I had a completely spherical, perfectly illuminated room where there were no shadows, and my own body didn't get in the way of the lighting source. I would struggle with it. It's just not my thing.
No, it's hard.
Do you like Final Fantasy? Are you excited about the remake of Final Fantasy VII? Did you ever
I'm not
play any of that?
I would have been a few years back. I think I've never finished a Final Fantasy game. 7 is the furthest I ever got through one. I think I played 7. I played the shit out 10 or X, and I played a little bit of X2, and then nothing since.
That kind of sounds like my
I
experience.
played 9. I tried 15, but I think I aged out of wanting to be a boy band.
Yeah. Driving around with your best mates.
Final Fantasy VII was one of the first Japanese RPG that we played when we were like, I don't know, 12 or something, or 14.
Yeah, I didn't come to it until I think it was ported to PC or something. I think I might have been in college. I came to it late.
That's actually when we played it too.
We played it on PC. Like we're a little bit younger than you, but Final Fantasy VII has a special place in my heart. I feel
Metal Gear Solid.
And Metal Gear Solid, correct. Like those two games were games that showed us anyway that video games can have pretty good storylines.
Mm-hmm.
Which before that, the things I played didn't.
Hard to do. It's real hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Any other questions?
I don't know. We could maybe call. I need to get up at like 5:15 tomorrow.
Oh boy. Are you essential?
Greg?
So I'm at a lab that tests like pharmaceuticals before they can like go to market and stuff. So like it's considered essential.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm still being paid, so that's good.
That's the main thing.
Yeah. So that is good.
I'm an electron microscopist, so pretty soon I think I'm going to be imaging different samples on an electron microscope related to pathogenesis and stuff like that for the virus. So
right on, man.
Yeah, that's cool.
Just make video games, you guys. It's like stop raising the bar. I know fuck all.
Yeah.
What do you? I mean, yeah. But okay, cool. I'll make stupid toys and yeah, cool. You guys do.
No, but I mean, we'll think about it this way: like all of that stuff, like this, like entertainment and stuff, has been really important with getting a lot of people through these trying and interesting times.
Yeah,
I hope so. I hope some of it makes a difference.
It certainly does. It certainly
doing science isn't what gets me up in the morning, or isn't what
it's
I'm
not.
excited about. Like, I like it well enough, but like, I don't.
Yeah, research sucks. Fucking sucks.
Yeah, shit sucks. It's hard.
But well.
Oh yeah, it was really great. Thanks for talking.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thanks for everybody for being active in the chat.
Yeah, right on. Cool. And then we'll if there's any links and stuff, I don't know, I'll find a way to post the some of the references and stuff that we.
Yeah. We can work on something. Like I have that Google document I shared with you. I usually in that like start to put information and get links together, so we could do that.
Okay. I have a version of that doc where I wrote out my answers in case I got lost, so I can send you that.
Okay.
We didn't end up actually talking in the same way, but most of the stuff is in there, so I can mail it to you.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Keep on hobbying and whatnot in these times.
Be safe.
Yeah.
Don't